Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching The Mining Show, brought to you by Blythe Way on Core Finance. I'm Charlie Gibson. Now, as you know, we always try and bring you companies with a bit of sparkle, and hopefully that sparkle flows through into their share price. Well, one such company which is up 100%, or roughly 100% round figures, over the course of the last year or so is Botswana Diamonds, and joining me now is the Managing Director, James Campbell. James, very good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's your AGM today, but tell us, what's the latest of Botswana Diamonds? What's the corporate update?
Good morning, Charlie. It's lovely to be interviewed with you, and I love your kind of association with sparkling because we are a diamond explorer. Yes, indeed, we have our AGM this morning at Paddington, and what we're going to be giving there is a corporate update on what we've done over the past year, as unsurprisingly. But what is probably the most important element of that update is our update on our South African projects. We've got three major projects there. The first one is Thorny River, where we've done a large amount of drilling, 2 phases of drilling, 3 phases of ground geophysics, and we're currently in the process of completing a fairly large surface bulk sample. The second one is in a place called Ontefreden, which is in the Northwest Province, where we've taken that Kimberlite all the way through to mineral chemistry and plan to drill it next year. And then thirdly, we've rediscovered a number of Kimberlites in the Orange Free State province of South Africa, some of which were worked over 100 years ago.
So which ones should we be looking at? Which ones are you majoring on? Because that's a lot of Kimberlites we've got around.
Charlie, indeed it is. And I think there are 2 parts to that. One, I think it's always important to have a portfolio of projects. Because in exploration, whether it be diamonds or anything else, you go so far and some don't actually meet the hurdle. But the vast amount of our resources this year have gone into the Thorny River project, which is about 3 hours north of Johannesburg and in vicinity to the world-famous Fontaine diamond mine, which had a payback of 3.5 days, and also close to Klipspringer diamond mine, which is owned by Assa Resources plc.
Okay, so we know that it used to be Moana, Africa. And
that's correct. Yes.
Is it related in any way to Venetia, which is...
Sadly not. Venetia is some 250 kilometres north of this Kimberlite field. But Klipspringer is on the western edge of the Kimberlite field. Fontaine is in the middle. And we essentially have all the ground immediately to the east of Fontaine to the end of that particular Kimberlite field.
So what do we know so far about Thorny River? Or what do you know so far about Thorny River? We know it's a Kimberlite. Is it the usual vertical sort of Kimberlite structure?
No, sadly not. What we have here is a set of on-echelon Kimberlite dikes, which average in width about 1.4 metres, but anastomose and often go out to form a blow, just like Fontaine. Fontaine was only 0.4 hectares in size, had a 3.5-day payback, and gave the shareholders $250 million. So the results of our drilling programme have illustrated a 7.5 kilometre dike strike, with an average width of 1.4 metres, and we've so far proven it down to 100 metres. We've also done microdiamond work, which have given an average grade of round about 60 carats per 100 tonnes. And what we've just completed now is a fairly large surface bulk sample in order to get a much better idea of the diamond grade and diamond value.
And what's it showing so far? Does it confirm the 60?
Well,
60
Charlie, we're still in the process of doing it, so sadly I can't actually say much more than that.
You can't, and you presumably can't tell us anything about the value either per carat?
No, we obviously, once the diamonds have been recovered from the processing facility, they will be independently valued as well.
Okay, so they're going through the process plant at the moment, or the processing facility at the moment, aren't they?
That's entirely correct, Charlie.
Okay,
yes.
And have you any idea how many diamonds you may recover? You must know how many tonnes you put through, so you'll know how many diamonds roughly you're going to cover.
Well, diamonds are coming out as we speak at the moment, so right. I'm a bit reluctant to actually say progress until we've made a press release.
Good. Okay, so that's good news. Have you seen any of them?
By photograph, yes.
Right, and do they look pretty and octahedral and white as they ought to?
Well, look, we've obviously seen the Klipspringer and Fontaine production through photographs through their respective companies, and they don't look anything dissimilar from those 2 operations.
All right, so that probably is as much as you can tell us. Except you can probably tell us a bit about the timing. When do we expect to get results from? When do we expect to get a result on grade, and when do we expect to get a result on value?
Charlie, in July, when we raised £890,000, we told our investors that 80% of that money will be spent on Thorny River and targeting an inferred resource on Thorny River by the end of the year. By the end of this week, we would have completed the field work on Thorney River, and by early next year, we would have actually completed the report on it. So you can expect news releases coming out over the next few weeks on Thorney River.
We should look forward very much indeed to that. Now, you said there were a couple of other projects that you needed to talk about. One was the old, presumably around Kimberley, is it?
That's correct,
Yeah,
south of Kimberley.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Tell us about those.
Well, this is a very interesting story in that our team investigated a number of kimberlites in the Africana Library in Bloemfontein and in the National Archives in Kimberley, and found a number of kimberlites which had been worked at the turn of the last century. So what we have done in Botswana Diamonds is we've gone and had a look at those kimberlites, confirmed they are indeed kimberlites by taking whole rock geochemistry samples. We've concluded the ground geophysics on them, so we have approximate sizes on those kimberlites. And the next phase is to take samples for mineral chemistry so we can prioritise which ones do we actually focus on next year.
So, and what do we know so far about them? We know they were worked, but presumably they weren't fully developed by the sounds of it.
They were worked at that time, but one must remember at that particular time, kimberlites were obviously stopped because of economics, but also they were stopped because of water. Because at that particular time, water technology isn't what it is today. So one of the things we're obviously going to be looking at in the lens of current technology, current thinking, and the current diamond market, will these actually work or not? Because one must remember, Jaggers fontaine, which has long been worked out, was an absolute stunning diamond mine and produced wonderful gems, which are all over the world now.
And then, are you, if development on them stopped relatively quickly, are you still in so-called yellow ground, the weathered ground, or are you in the blue ground now?
Our field observations suggest we're still in the yellow ground at the moment.
Okay, so that's actually easier to process. It's quite a lot easier to process, isn't it, than the blue ground underneath?
Absolutely. And what is very interesting is we don't think anybody's actually looked at these over the past decade. 3 decades, 4 decades, we actually don't quite know. Because the current landowners have been there for a generation or more, and nobody's gone back and looked at them. Which to us is actually a very exciting proposition.
Okay. Do you know why, presumably they were owned by De Beers at one stage in their life, were they?
They were owned by a number of different operators. You ask a very good question, Charlie, and I actually can't answer that one. But yes, as my mother said, who's a historian, the victor always writes the history book.
So they would give the impression that it was their ground anyway. So, but
I'm going to pass on that
one. I was going to ask if you knew why they didn't progress it any further, because presumably there must have been an option at some stage. But anyway, but as you said, I mean that's up to historians. What about, and then your other set of projects is in the Northwest Province?
That's correct. I must also touch briefly on Botswana.
Yeah.
We have discovered a kimberlite called Ontefreden, or rediscovered, sorry, which is 30 kilometres north of Petra's Gila mine. What we've done with that is we've done 2 phases of ground geophysics to actually illustrate its size, and we've done mineral chemistry work, which indicates that it has a high potential for strong diamond-bearing kimberlite. So the next phase of that is obviously drilling, so we can actually confirm the size and then take samples for microdiamonds as well.
Okay, and what's the timing on that?
Early next year.
So basically everything's happening early next year?
Well, if you've seen,
there's a lot of news coming out.
Well, if you've actually seen our news flow over the last year or so, that we've had very regular news flow, so that news flow will continue to happen into the new year as well.
Okay, and then finally on the Northwest Province project?
Now, in Botswana, we've got 2 joint ventures, one with Alrosa, where we're exploring in the central Kalahari, in the vicinity of GEM's Gargu mine and Petra's KX36 discovery. And there we're particularly excited about the application of new technology in Botswana, which is, of course, lion country for diamonds. And then the Maibri joint venture with BCL. Sadly, BCL's in liquidation, but we certainly hope to progress that in the new year.
Excellent. All right, good. So all to look forward in the new year.
Yes.
Excellent, James. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was James Campbell, the Managing Director of Botswana Diamonds. I'm afraid that's all we got time for today, but stay with us and we'll be back next week and we'll be bringing you other mining projects, ideas, thoughts, companies, and hopefully they'll also have the potential to push their share prices up by about 100% over 12 months, which seems like a nice round number. We will see you very shortly, and in the meantime, you have a very capital day.